Hello, we live.
Good afternoon. Beautiful city of Durham. The river's running past us in the front there. Looking forward to catching up with you today.
We live together today on our Think About It session. So we're both in the beautiful Durham. We both have one laptop. So this isn't just Kirsty Wait.
Yeah.
So today we're coming to talk about emotional intelligence in leadership and in running a business. So Tienie, emotional intelligence.
Yes, that's a big subject, and 30 minutes is certainly not enough. Where do we start? What is the key elements? And for us as the ethical coaching company, one of the key things that we teach is know yourself. Warts and all. Understand what are the things that trip you up. Understand what are the things that allow you to flourish. What are the things that are your drivers, your motivation, the way that you represent empathy. We can go into the boring stuff of what are the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence from a self perspective versus others' perspective, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we go along.
As a starting point, should we talk about what emotional intelligence is? Because I think sometimes it's one of those things that's battered around a little bit and people talk about EQ and emotional intelligence, and I don't know. Should we just start with making sure we're all on the same page?
So those people that just walk into a room or that you meet at a party, that they've just got a presence about them. They've just got an energy that's measured. I would reckon that they've got a high emotional intelligence and understanding of self. And emotional intelligence is broken up into 2 key elements, is that how you identify your own emotions and regulate them. And then outwardly, it's how you identify what someone else is feeling or going through at the minute, displaying empathy, and are able to regulate and meet them where they are from an emotional intelligence perspective. So those are kind of the 2 concepts of emotional intelligence as I see them.
It's the adaptation piece for me to their response is the real key, because when we talk about self-awareness, I think you can have self-awareness and not high emotional intelligence necessarily. Yeah. I think self-awareness is a part of emotional intelligence, but it's the understanding others and the adapting to them, which is the important bit.
Yeah.
So hopefully that you can relate to that, you understand that. So why does it matter in leadership, and why does it matter in running a business, emotional intelligence? Like, why should we even be bothered in having this conversation?
So from a self-awareness perspective, I am aware that I'm a reflector, but I'm not doing anything about it. So in a meeting, I don't necessarily share my point of view. I don't necessarily offer up a perspective. If someone asked me a question, I would then respond. And yes, from a facilitator point of view, those are potentially reflectors, people that need some time just to think about things, need a nudge to actually speak up. So from an emotional intelligence perspective, they've got the self-awareness that that's who I am. It's the self-regulation and meeting others where they are from a training perspective that might tire you because you now have to speak more than what you're normally used to. But what you're doing is you're trying to add value to the room by your emotional intelligence and upping your game, so to speak, in some of the emotional intelligence that you do.
And I think if for those listening and those that are tuning in, it's probably easier for you to recognize when you have been led, or you've had a manager, or you've worked with people that have pretty low emotional intelligence and low self-awareness, because the impact of that is probably much more detrimental. Whereas if you think of someone with high emotional intelligence, they're much more empowering, they meet you where you are, they engage in, and you have a great experience. Like, you walk away thinking, they were really interested in me in the conversation. I had a really good conversation, versus someone that has low emotional intelligence. You probably get the complete opposite. You probably don't enjoy being around those people. That probably is not great people leaders and managers, and that can have a direct impact, can it, on the building of a business and the leadership of it, and also managing a team.
It just springs to mind. Very bubbly, outgoing, sunflower kind of person, talks a lot, is out there just driving things. thinking that they've got great emotional intelligence because they're displaying their emotions. Very poor listening skills. Not necessarily understanding that they need to slow down their energy to meet the person that they're talking to actually listen for understanding rather than listening to offer up my opinion and add to what they're saying. So it's different flavors of emotional intelligence that you're displaying. And I also think that maturity, motivation, energy, when I say maturity, I mean maturity of thought in the situation, recognition of the environment that you find yourself in. Those kind of things are things that I think are sitting on the periphery of the actual self-regulation and understanding versus projection of your emotional intelligence.
Interestingly, on that conversation, I saw some research done, and I'm going off memory, so this might not be accurate, but it's roughly there, where they did a test of managers. I think it was Harvard Business School, so it was quite a big chunk of people. And I think there was like 86% of them acknowledged and recognized themselves as being emotionally intelligent leaders. But then they did some testing, and I think it came down to like 16% actually demonstrated real behavioral traits of emotional intelligence. And I think that is like mind blowing to actually go, wow, okay. So people think they're emotionally intelligent. People think they're meeting people where they are, but also there's a bit of ego there, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's stopping them actually being emotionally intelligent potentially.
And so from where we're coming from, know yourself is the starting point in the array of all the knowledge around emotional intelligence. And so if I have to give a tip to anybody, it's do an emotional intelligence on yourself, and be as truthful as what you can be on the assessment, so that you expose your limitation within emotional intelligence. And it will be in one of the 4 areas: self-awareness, self-regulation, audience awareness, and regulating towards the audience would be the 4 common areas. There are things like empathy, environment, motivation, energy that you bring that sit on the periphery of that. And there's quite a few emotional intelligence assessments that do that for you. But to your point, there are so many things that are measurements or consequences of poor emotional intelligence, but there are also things that are consequences of great emotional intelligence. And seek out those things and try and emulate those for yourself.
I think listening, you mentioned listening there. I think that's a really great place to start. Know yourself, but also how well do you listen to those around you, your team, the people you interact with from a business perspective? And do you listen to understand? Because I think so often it's the listening where people get tripped up and where they fall down from being self-aware, but not listening to the other person to regulate themselves and meet them where they are. I think that's the connecting point.
Yeah.
To go from being self-aware to being really high EQ leading. Does that make sense?
Very
so
much.
I think that next kind of tip, if you like, is know yourself and get really curious, but also observe and reflect on your listening skills. And I know that sounds really simple, but it's being able to regulate and listen rather than be hijacked and go for delivery or to fix a problem or to just give an action, to actually slow down and listen to what the other person is saying. And there's another part of EQ, isn't it? And that's the observation of what the person's doing, like the unsaid, if you like, communication.
Yes. Yeah. And so coaching skills and creating and sharpening those coaching skills from a leadership perspective helps you become more curious, ask questions rather than give answers, orientate towards solution seeking rather than, oh my goodness, this is a problem and I don't know how to regulate my own emotion, and out your emotion. This is making me feel uncomfortable. I don't know where to go with this, but let me continue asking some questions so that I get more clarity, get a clearer understanding of what's going on. Because more than likely, sometimes we just assume and from an assumption perspective, go through the wrong area of the deductive reasoning that we go through our own minds based on our own frame of reference. And so get clarity of the other person's frame of reference by asking questions, by being curious.
So for people listening who might be thinking, yeah, I get it, it's really important, but actually in the moment, sometimes business gets in the way, sometimes I just need to tell people, sometimes I don't have time for this. What are we saying to those people? Why should they care about this stuff?
I think if you don't want to make a difference, don't do anything.
Don't be a leader.
Yeah, don't be a leader. Yeah, I'm just realizing my face is so red, and I don't know why that is.
I think it is. You know, I think it's the light.
I think it's just the light, and I'm a bit self-aware. No, so it's the adding value to the people around you in a meaningful way that we need to pursue as leaders. We need to start taking care of the people around us, understanding the situations that they find themselves, especially in today's life of hustle and bustle and busyness. And I know busyness isn't a measure, it's a cop-out, but being emotionally aware that someone's that busy that they are replying to emails on holiday needs to be managed, needs to be asked them to switch off and help themselves. We know they care and they want to be part of the business even while they're on holiday, and they want to be doing things in that space. But as an emotionally aware leader, how are we helping our people actually switch off and regain the energy that they need so that they can become more emotionally aware and emotionally available at work?
And I think that comes to the benefits of understanding and recognizing the benefits of investing your time and effort and energy as a manager or a leader to want to be supportive, have a collaborative relationship, be that kind of leader that empowers your team, right? You've got to nurture them and look after them. So understanding there is a payoff around choosing to be one kind of leader versus the other. And like you said at the beginning, like, I know we were being flippant, but you've got to choose to want to be a manager. That makes a difference, right? And also there's a big piece of self-development around it of how can you become a better leader, a better manager. And that isn't just for your own benefit, that's for the benefit of your direct team, but also the business. And if you think of kind of staff retention, as we've spoke a lot, that people leave managers and leaders, not businesses. So there is a direct impact on the bottom line and costs to being an intentional, better leader. And I think emotional awareness and regulation is a huge part of being a great leader. And I know that's a big statement, but I really do.
I agree. To add to that, Kirsty, you can be great at performance managing your team and pushing them over the line and stretching them to grow. Be great at emotionally managing your team as well. It's equally as important as performance management.
It is. And I think and I'll share this openly, like I've been managed by people who have so little emotional awareness. And it's so disempowering from a team member's perspective. And it's really difficult. You almost end up meeting them where they are, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult. And I don't think I definitely did not thrive under that kind of leadership. And I understand not all leaders are meant for all people, and there's certain people that you work better for. But as a general perspective, I understand what that feels like to work with somebody who you feel doesn't acknowledge how you feel, isn't, or chooses not to acknowledge how you feel, isn't aware of what's going on and the impact that has on the team and the morale and how engaged the team are, but also how much the team want to give back from a productive, loyal perspective. Like, I've witnessed that firsthand. Yeah. So I want to help people not have to live that every day. I want them to enjoy being in the workplace. And I think the answer to that is better managers. And as we've said, emotional intelligence is the route to that, I believe.
So I've got a question for you. So I'm a manager. I don't want to necessarily display my emotions and be aware of my emotional intelligence because that'll show weakness.
That's really that's really interesting, because that's almost like that belief of vulnerability is a weakness in the workplace. And I'm not saying that everyone should be really open and vulnerable with everything. I understand that. But understanding that you are leading as a person for people to understand who you are and your style, and that you can connect on an emotional, human level with your team, is a different experience for your team. And I think it's putting your own ego aside and having confidence in your own ability and confidence in yourself as a leader, that by you being a human and understanding your team isn't a weakness and it isn't a vulnerability. It's actually a superpower, because people will buy into you much more.
Yeah. So make no mistake, your team know that you are fallible, because they are.
Because
They're human. And so vulnerability is actually courage.
Yeah.
How courageous are you to be able to display some vulnerability to your team and trust them to the extent that they want to actually rally around you and want to do work for you? Because there's a massive difference between performance that is complying versus performance that is committing. And emotional intelligence and the management of emotional intelligence with your team, displaying vulnerability, being courageous in the interactions that you have with your team, offers up the shift from someone complying versus, oh, I want to do something for this person, into the commit space. And the performance improves dramatically in that space.
What do you think the most difficult element is of emotional intelligence for people to grasp and do well?
Meeting someone else where they are. And the way that the starting point is know yourself. Is I struggle to empathize with people with a low threshold of severity. But it's meeting them there because it's their level of severity, not necessarily your level of severity. And then having the compassion, the non-judgmental approach, the empathy to meet them where they are, I think is so important.
And I think that's what's lost day to day very quickly. So let's play that out with what you've just said. You're a line manager. I work for you. I really struggle. You can see that I've got a very low threshold. The agitation, your automatic knee-jerk reaction to go, oh my God, Kirsty, come on, it's so simple. Like that is
Exactly.
Demonstrating the lack of emotional intelligence to regulate yourself and go, I can see Kirsty's at her threshold here. How can I meet her where she is to help her get over that threshold and develop and learn, versus getting frustrated and annoyed and that conversation playing out. So that's a real life kind of how you might witness the dysregulation of your own emotions based on other person's response and how that can be seen. And I think the biggest thing that stops that is ego.
Yes.
I know better than you. Like, come on, I can do this, you can do this.
Yeah. And ego is the biggest contributor to dismissing someone else's emotion. And so the understanding that I'm now going and dismissing and thinking, oh my goodness, that's so easy to do. Can't you just crack on and get over yourself and just let's move into that space and get it done, is being dismissive, which is your ego pontificating. And so now let's try and manage that for ourselves from an emotional awareness perspective. So yes, that I think is one of the challenges, is meeting people where they are, whether or not you have the same understanding or view of what that looks like. So as soon as you start dismissing someone's emotions, your ego is getting in the way, and become aware of that.
I think that's definitely the most challenging, especially people that if you just stepping into management, or if you haven't done any kind of development reflection work, we sometimes don't recognize how much we hijacked and how much we just assume and how much we put our expectations on other people. And there's a fallout of that, isn't there? And I think that's where bad managers are formed, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes by accident, but it's just, they've just morphed into that, haven't they?
but if I can do it, you can do it. And as soon as that happens, it's an unfair comparison.
Yeah.
Because you're in a management role based on a particular skill set that you have that is potentially stronger than the people that are working for you in that team. And as soon as you say, yeah, but I can, why can't you do that? I've trained you up on this. I've told you 17 times about that. Look at self. What is the way that I'm approaching this individual so that what it is that they need to be doing isn't being done properly?
And imagine how disempowering and dismissive it is to be that individual getting told, well, if I can do it, why can't you? Well, you're applying a completely different set of experiences, background, skills, and go, oh, well, I should know this. And then that's where that self-doubt, that kind of, that inner chat, why can't I do this? I should be able to do this. And I then put my hand up and go, oh, I don't know how to do it, because there's going to be judgment, there's going to be repercussions, and then that obviously escalates into a much different situation, right? Okay, so let's just summarize a little bit of what we think people who are listening who know they need to work on emotional intelligence. What are the key takeaways what we've got? So we've got number 1, know yourself.
Start with self. Yeah.
And what does that look like practically?
So there's 2 things. The one is, where your strengths are and where your limitations are, and then pivot those around your ego. And if you keep pontificating and want to actually just boast about stuff that you're doing, that is poor emotional intelligence channeled in the incorrect way.
Yeah.
The other thing is do an assessment to actually measure it on a black and white perspective, and be as honest in your answers during that assessment to give you an outcome.
And I think reflection of how conversations went, how you could have been more aware of your emotions and the emotions of others potentially. So that know yourself piece is very much around.
Ego gets in the way of reflection as well. So just be careful of that.
Number 2, practice listening. Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
Slow down. I think we live in a world that's so fast paced. Time is money. We need to go, we need to move, we need to do an action, we need to resolve this issue ASAP. Well, actually, if we look at the impact of risk, we can afford to take a beat, right? We can afford to take a couple of minutes and have a really calm, controlled conversation where everyone's listening to each other.
Especially when other people are involved, when there's another human being in front of you and you need to try and meet them where they are, just take a beat, just slow down. Maybe that's what they need.
Yeah. Lastly, what's the last one I've brought down? Oh, I've brought down 2. Unsaid communication. Look at the person as a whole, their behaviors, their responses, the environment, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So from a unspoken element, someone with a frown on their face might just be thinking rather than not agreeing. And so become curious, ask more questions, be inquisitive, and say, oh, I see you've got a frown on your face. Is it something I've said? I didn't mean to offend you. Do we need to explore this? No, I'm just thinking of what you said. Okay, and then ask more questions for clarification.
And I do that in a coaching session a lot, and I love it because people don't think you've realized or recognized a reaction. Okay, I've just seen your face change slightly there. Tell me what you mean by that. And they're like, oh, did I display that? I'm like, yeah, let's talk about that. And actually, then you're kind of getting the expectations on the table, and you're inviting them to an open, transparent conversation.
Yeah, and that's what it is. The whole engagement of emotional intelligence in the way that you're interacting with someone else to meet them where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I wrote, and this isn't, well, you could take it as a tip if you like. Be collaborative in your leadership, and it's a 2-way street. It's not an authoritative, you do what I say approach. It's collaborative. We invite in conversation. We invite in, and we adapt into that. It's not just a one-way street. That's the last thing I've got on there.
I don't know how much time we've got left. I don't have my glasses on. I can't
1
see
minute,
the time.
talk quick.
Is that, no, so then it's no time for a story. I can bring the story to the next one. But it is that whole thing, raise concerns so that you can air what it is that's bothering you, so that you can have a collaborative discussion about it and exchange ideas around it. It's not a bad approach.
I love it. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us in our Think About It sessions. We'll be back next week for our next Think About It sessions. We will be on time properly, so we'll be back to 12:30, and we'll be back to separate cameras, different sides of the country, probably. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you got something out of it. Let us know if you've got any insights or any questions.